Dr. Umar Faruq Abdullah needs very little introduction, and so I'm not even going to try. I heard one of my teachers today describe him as one of the world's leading most scholars in the West. And I think that really says it all. Alhamdulillah. We are very, 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 very blessed in that when Dr. Umar landed at the airport and we went to pick him up, he sort of stretched a little bit and he smiled and he went, "It's good to be home." And that kind of felt really good because it was like, yeah. And then he walked into our house and he went, "Oh, I remember that smell." And that felt even better. But there you go. So, alhamdulillah, we're very blessed at the Hub to have not only Dr. Umar's presence but also his patronage. And inshallah, tonight is slightly different because if any of you have ever sat and just listened to Dr. Umar, not deliver an actual class, but just reflect on stories, reflect on people he knows, reflect on his scholars, reflect on his teachers, reflect on the time that he has spent. You get transported into a different world. And inshallah, tonight, Dr. Umar has spent the last couple of months in the Gambia, and he's been travelling in the Gambia, he's been teaching in the Gambia, but he's also been travelling outside and to other places in West Africa. And he's been in the presence of some incredible souls, including his Sheikh Muhammad, who unfortunately we weren't able to have with us, physically at least. And so tonight we're just going to sit and listen, inshallah, to Dr. Umar reflect on the last couple of months in the Gambia. So that's it, that's enough said. Jazakallah khairan to all of you for coming. Assalamu alaikum.
I wasn't there.
السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم افتح علينا بحكمتك وانشر علينا برحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على مولانا محمد وعلى آله في كل لمحة ونفس عدد ما وسعه علم الله. يا عليم علمنا من علمك ما ترضى به عنا ولا تؤاخذنا بما تعلمه منا. يا حليم خلقنا بخلق الحلم وحققنا بحقائق العلم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Alhamdulillah, it's very nice to be back here, and it's very nice to see these beautiful faces of beloved people. And I hope that these last 2 months, since I've been gone, or 2.5 months, since I left here about mid-December actually, have been really beneficial, and that the Hub has grown and has made great progress, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. That's something really, really important. Al-makanu bil-makin, that we say that a place is given value by the one who's in that place. Al-makanu bil-makin. And this is my 4th trip to the Gambia. Each time that I've gone there, I've gone for about 2 months. And the Gambia is a very beautiful country. It's a very small country. It's in fact the smallest country in Africa. And it's just around the Gambia River. It's just the shores of the Gambia River in the heart of Senegal. And each time I go there because of a particular person who is there, who is Sheikh Muhammad ibn Ahmed ibn Ibrahim ibn Yusuf al-Jilani, who is a direct descendant of Sheikh Abdul al-Jilani, and who is a man of extremely blessed company. So I go there to be with him, and Every time I've gone there, it has been extremely beneficial. These last 2 months were the most beneficial of all that I've ever spent with him. And although they were 2 months, it was like a lifetime. Not because of the fact that it was boring, but because of the fact that so much was happening. And yet for me to tell you about it, I don't know what I could say. I don't know, what I could say that, because outwardly, we didn't do that much. Mostly I just stayed in one place and slept and ate and drank and sat in the company of very good people, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. But these are the people who, because of their sincerity and because of their connection to Allah, they make you better and they make you more conscious of what you should be aware of. And this reality, which is the reality of the Shaykh and the Murid, or the Tabi' or the Matbu' and the Tabi', the Mashoob and the Sahib, as Shaykh Abdul al-Jilani himself says in Kitab al-Ghunya, is the most basic sunnah of God from the time of Adam until the last day. That every prophet has his own shaykh. He is taught through God. He's taught by God through the medium of an angel. And that angel brings out the human perfection that is in him. And then that prophet establishes with his community this relation of not just a communicator of a message, but of the one who transforms you by his own transformation. And this is the secret of the greatness of the Sahaba, because the companions are those who kept the suhbah of the Prophet ﷺ. He was their mashoob. They were the sahib. They were the ones who they were the ones who kept the company, and it was his company that was kept. So as Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani says, the Shaykh and the Murid, the mashoob, the one whose company is kept, and the sahib, the one who keeps that company, and the matbu', the one who is followed, and the tabi', the one who follows him. This is the basic sunnah. This is the basic paradigm of the deen from the days of Adam until the last day. And the health of the religion is when that relationship is properly kept, which means, of course, also that the people whom we designate as those to be followed, those whose company is to be kept, those who are shaykhs, are people who are worthy of that. And they are people that do that in order to take us to our Lord and to purify our hearts and to elevate our status and to remove all the blindness of the soul. And then also the one who keeps that company is one who has the right intention. Irada. The irada is the quality of the murid or of the murida, and irada is iradatu wajhullahi ta'ala. Iradatu wajhillahi ta'ala. It is the desire, the will to seek the countenance of God, to come close to God. So you have that right intention, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and you have the right company. And sometimes people would say that in times like these, there are no people whose company can be kept. They will say there are no shaykhs anymore. And as Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani indicates, this is completely untrue. But the reality is that, the Sufis use the metaphor of the mother and the baby's milk. That the mother has no milk in the breast until the baby is born. But when the baby is born, then that miracle takes place in her, and she's able to nurse the baby. She's able to give it what it needs to live. And so you have to have the baby in order to have the mother. The mother is the source of the baby, but without the baby, she really cannot be that. And so also in the sunnah of the sheikh and the murid, you have to have men and women who truly want God, who truly want sincerity, who truly want to bring this religion to life and to live it and to be it, and then they will be given that. In the Bible, it is said that Jesus said, peace be upon him, seek and you will find. So you have to have the seeker, and the seeker has to truly be seeking. But if you have that, inshallah, this will happen, this incredible phenomenon. And this is one of the greatest trusts of all, because of the fact that this is a trust which is at the very heart of all the sunnahs of the Prophet. Is this relationship, this dynamic relationship between the teacher and the one who is taught, between the one who is a transformer, who has been internally transformed by the message, and then who can transform you. And this is the way it was with the Prophet ﷺ. And this is why it's said of his companions that if any of us were to spend as much as the mountain of Uhud in gold, that we would not be able, that would not be worth so much as a date that one of the Prophet's companions ﷺ had given, for the sake of God. And this is because of their company to him and the way that transformed them totally. And also the fact that their actions became actions of the heart. Any action that comes out of the heart is great, and any action that does not come out of the heart, even though it may appear great, it's not that way. So this is a great thing, and these were wonderful days. Sheikh Faraz asked me what was the high point, and I wouldn't be able to say, because it's like the whole thing was new. Every day was different, and I'm very thankful for that. Some wonderful things happened. We had a conference there on January the 28th, and we have lots of murids who come from around the world to be there at that time, and that's one of the greatest things of all, because they all come together, and some amazing things happen, especially under the direction of the Shaykh, who takes certain decisions about what will be done and what will not be done. And that was just amazing, absolutely amazing. So, alhamdulillah, we traveled a lot. I went into Senegal many times, I lost count. And the first time I went in was by boat. We took a little boat to Janak, which is an island that's half in the Gambia and half in Senegal, and which really doesn't have a government there, because nobody goes there except for you have to have special permission to go there. It's an island of awliya, and if you go there without permission, something happens, like you lose your job or something else. So, and no one can go there in uniform. If they go there in uniform, they will lose their uniform. They'll lose their job. No president goes there; he'll lose his presidency. It's an amazing island, and we went there in a boat, and the people were all singing on the shores, and mashallah, very, very beautiful. And then in the end we went to Mauritania as well. We traveled across Senegal, and we went into Mauritania. That's actually the first time for me to go to Mauritania, and the Sheikh wanted me to see Mauritania, and then also we had friends there, and different people that we wanted to visit. So that was really amazing, and we traveled across Senegal. I know Senegal fairly well now, and then we came to the Senegal River. The border between Mauritania and Senegal is a beautiful river called the Senegal River, and it's just surrounded by green marshes. And the river itself is pure, it's a beautiful, clear river. And you have to take a boat across the river, or you have to take a ferry. And the boats are like canoes, and wooden boats that people mostly row, or that sometimes they have motors. But mashallah, that was amazing. And then the area around the Senegal River also is filled with wildlife. And I like that very much. There are lots of wild animals there, and then lots of birds from Europe that come there to spend the winter. And so you see geese, and you see all kinds of birds, and you see interesting wild animals, and at nighttime we even heard sounds of animals that I have no idea what they were. But this one animal sounded sort of like the Tasmanian devil, because he's making all this noise. He's really upset about something, and couldn't see it, but you could hear it. And then in the morning we drove off into the desert, and the desert there's really beautiful, really pretty. And especially you have this desert that's sort of almost orange in color. The sand is very, colorful. And the trees there, it's not extremely dry, although it's arid. So you have lots of trees there, and you have camels under the trees, grazing in the trees, putting their heads up and grazing in the trees. And the villages that we saw were also very pretty, very attractive. And then we went to Nouakchott, and we spent some time there. We were very well received, and the first thing we had there was a big sheep that they had fixed for us. Mauritanians only eat meat, and we went to the sea, and they catch these incredible fish. Like we saw huge tuna fish there, but the Mauritanians don't eat those. They just get the eggs. They eat the fish eggs, but they don't eat the fish. But other people like the Senegalese, they eat the fish, and they also export them. But that was really beautiful. We had to come back quickly, though, because of the fact that the elections were taking place in Senegal, and the Sheikh said that there was a great possibility that the border would be closed, and because of disturbances in Senegal, because of the elections. So, in fact, we had to get back to Gambia before the elections took place, which was last Sunday. That's a week ago, right? MashaAllah. And then they did close the borders, by the way, but we got back before that. And so alhamdulillah, it was an amazing trip. Went to lots of villages and spoke in the villages, met lots of people, and so I don't know what else to say. I mean, I'm very happy to be back. It seems like a long, long time ago that I was here, and I hope and pray that this work that you do here continues to grow. It's really, really important to do that, and to create these kind of hubs where we can give knowledge is, this is the greatest obligation of our time. We have to do that, and we have to bring this knowledge to life. And as we've said before, and this is one of the things that we emphasized in December, is the fact that the knowledge, reception of knowledge is, again, the basic medium of that is the teacher-student relationship, which is similar to the Shaykh-Murid relationship, the Sahib and the Mashub, the Tabi and the Matbu'. And the most important thing is that we have teachers, and I think all the teachers that you have here are like that, who are men and women that have imbibed the knowledge, in that they love it, they believe in it, and they have been transformed by it. And therefore the knowledge does what it's supposed to do, and it transforms people, and it gives them understanding, and it gives them the ability to act that they didn't have before. So maybe we can pause at this point, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to entertain those.
think a useful pause would be, we have a whole bunch of snacks. So if people just take some snacks, think of your questions, and we have Dr. Umar here, and ask, make the most of this opportunity to ask him questions, bi'iznillahi ta'ala. So we'll take a couple of minutes just to grab yourself some snacks. There's tissue papers that you can
Begin with the sisters, inshallah. So if anyone would like to start us off with a question. Sister Sadia?
There's someone online that's asking a question about how Islam arrived to Gambia and the madhab of the people of Gambia.
Okay, so there's a question online about how Islam came to the Gambia and the madhabs of the people there. Islam came to the Gambia very early, and the Gambia is one of the critical areas from which Islam spread in West Africa. The Mandingos, who are the dominant tribe of Gambia and Senegal and Mali and much of West Africa, are a tribe that has a connection to the Prophet ﷺ, which goes back to the days of the Prophet ﷺ. And also, a lot of the Mandingos are Quraysh. So you have in them the line of Umar ibn al-Khattab, and you have in them the line of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, and you have in them Ahlul Bayt and other lines of Quraysh. And they are people who have immense leadership qualities, and they are able to rule, but also to unify and not to divide. And their history in West Africa is very important, and for that reason also their language is one of the most widely understood in West Africa. When we were speaking about community building in the month of December, I talked about the Mandingo Trading Village, which was one of their cultural innovations that is one of the most beautiful of those innovations that Muslims have made anywhere to spread Islam, that they created trading villages that enabled them over hundreds of years to put together the markets of West Africa and to spread Islam and to bring people, to bring converts into the community of the Mandingos, to teach them Mandingo, but also to teach them Arabic and to teach them Islam. And this trading village that the Mandingos created is still represented in many of the traditional Mandingo villages. And they have a sense of coherence and of solidarity, which is really amazing. They have tremendous wisdom. One of the things, all the peoples of West Africa, to my knowledge, all the tribes there are tribes in which culture is very important, as culture is in all people in the world. But the way that they go about doing things, the way they receive guests, and other things like that, it's just really amazing. So they have an old tradition. And the kingdom of Mali, which was one of the greatest kingdoms of the medieval world, was a Mandingo kingdom that grew up out of these Mandingo trading villages. And it reached its height around the year 1300. The 1200s, 1300s, 1400s. That was the peak of the state of Mali, or the Empire of Mali. The Empire of Mali was known throughout the world at that time. And it was known primarily because of the fact that it was extremely rich in gold. The world's gold came from Mali. No doubt that's West African gold. That's what people have always believed. There are gold mines in West Africa. There are also a lot of gold mines in other parts of Africa. My belief is also that the Mandingos crossed the Atlantic to America at least as early as 1312 in the time of Mansa Kankan Abu Bakr II. This is very well documented. I've spoken about it. There are books that have been written about it. It's almost certain that that happened, that they came across the Atlantic with 2,400 boats, and that they had a presence in America before Columbus came. When Cortez goes to Mexico City, for example, he says that we found in the city of Tenochtitlan many mosques and many pagan temples and many beautiful houses. And this refrain is heard over and over again in the works of the Spanish conquerors. So the Mandingo tradition is one that goes back a long time. And they began to spread Islam in West Africa from the earliest centuries. Today, Gambia is maybe, the Gambians themselves are probably like 99% Muslim. There are also Christians there, but the Christians are usually from outside the Gambia. They are people who come from Liberia or from other countries that are around Gambia and who work there. In terms of madhab, the Gambians are overwhelmingly Maliki, that's the school they have. And in terms of their path, the Qadiri tariqa is by far the dominant one. The Mandingos are almost 100% Qadiris. You won't find anything else. And they have a love of Ahlul Bayt, which is amazing. They have a tremendous love of Ahlul Bayt. And they have a great love of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani.
Next question.
We'll give sisters a second chance. Go ahead.
If you could share perhaps a piece of advice that Sheikh Muhammad gave you that would be something that we can benefit from.
So, what is the great advice of the Sheikh? Well, I would say that one of the most important things that we should never forget, are the words of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani radiallahu anhu, when he said that man yara li nafsihi qadran فلا قدر له ومن رأى لنفسه فضلا فلا فضل له. That whoever sees that he has a particular status has no status at all. That whoever sees that he has a particular, actually he said wazna, من رأى لنفسه وزنا فلا وزن له. Whoever believes that he has a particular weight has no weight at all. So this is one of the most important principles of the path. That you never see yourself as better than anyone. And you never see yourself as having special distinction. And we said before that the relation between the Shaykh and the Murid, the Mashoob and the Sahib, the Matbu' and the Tabi' is a sunnah that goes back to Adam alayhi salam and that lasts till the last day. But one of the reasons why you have to have this relationship is because of the fact that it protects you from the self. And when we are on the path of knowledge and practice and implementation of this message and bringing it to life, then invariably we begin to see ourselves as special. We begin to see ourselves as people of distinction. And even though you know in your conscious mind that you shouldn't be that way, it has a way of taking you by surprise. And this is where you need the guidance of people who can bring you back down to where you ought to be. And you don't see yourself as having any special distinction. I understand that when Sheikh Naeem spoke to you last night, that he said words to the effect that when you put yourself as low as the earth in humility, then you become as high as the heavens. So this is very, very important, that we never see ourselves as having excellence over anyone. Again, we are created, to know God. We are created to worship God. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create the spirits and human beings, but that they worship me. Ibn Abbas taught us that the meaning of this is so that they know me. So they come to have the knowledge of me. And the emphasis on ibadah is there because of the fact that it is the means to that knowledge. I can only come to know my Lord truly as a worshipper of my Lord, not just by thinking about it or studying it or philosophizing about it, but the path to that is the path of worship. But who among us fulfills this task? We're created with the greatest of responsibilities, to worship God, to know God, to serve God in this world. And who among us can say that he or she has fulfilled that? And when we look at all the other creatures around us, each of them does what it's supposed to do. The dog is a dog. It does what dogs are supposed to do. The sheep is a sheep. It does what sheep are supposed to do. The bird is a bird. It sings the way a bird is supposed to sing. It lives the way that a bird is supposed to live. It never deviates from that at all. All these other creatures, the trees and the animals, they fulfill what they were created for. But what about us? We are the ones who will be held accountable. We are the ones who will be taken to task. So it's very important for us, therefore, to be totally humble. And that is to be honest with ourselves. To recognize our weakness, to recognize our shortcomings.
Glad to have you back at the hub. It's just amazing seeing you. Today we were having a talk about time management and how to orient one's day and how to structure it. I was just wondering how you and Sheikh Muhammad Qadiri, like a normal structure for the day, how would that go by?
So time management, time is a sword. If you don't cut it, it cuts you. I don't think we had actually any particular schedule like that. You must know what kind of a schedule I had in the Gambia. But sometimes we'd stay up all night driving, and sometimes I would sleep a lot, and he would let me sleep. And but usually we're up. I was usually teaching at about 7:30 in the morning. So I spent a lot of the time teaching, and that was also very beneficial because of the fact that I was reminded of the value of teaching traditional texts traditionally. Which means that I had a particular text which is very dear to me called Ashal al-Masalik, and I began to teach that and sort of speed through it to get to the core, and I was told to go back to the very beginning and start all over again, and to give the commentary on all the words, what they mean, and to take no more than 3 verses a day, which was really beneficial for me because of the fact that that's the way I learned the text to begin with. And then also to go slowly so that people could write down the words and could also write down something that they could memorize from what I said. Because I have a tendency to talk a lot. And they would just say, stop, okay, stop. Give us something, let them write it down, let them memorize it, and then you can go on. So that to me was a great gift, because it showed me that also I think, we have to be relevant to the time we're in, but I think that also for this knowledge that we teach to really be a benefit, people have got to be able to take it home. They can't just come and listen to you and be inspired by beautiful words and beautiful concepts, but then when they go home and you ask them, what were you taught? Maybe they don't have anything to say. So over and over again, I was taught to go slowly, and to wait until people can write down something and let them repeat it to you and make sure that they got it correctly. And that was very empowering for me, because also it's like there's so much in the traditional text which, if you don't give it attention, you overlook. For example, one of the verses in that poem, it says, that العلم فرض لزم كل امرئ مكلف أن يعلم ما أوجب الله من الأحكام. So it says that knowledge is an obligation on every mukallaf, every person that has moral responsibility, to learn what has been made obligatory upon them in the prophetic law. And so here it's like, okay, who is the mukallaf? What is the mukallaf? And I explained that the mukallaf in Maliki fiqh is the one who has reached age, who is baligh, and who has aql, who has intellect, understands the meaning of what they do, the consequences of what they do, and to whom the message has come in full. They've received the prophetic message. And then we just talked about that for about half an hour. How profound that is, because in fact, many non-Muslims, if not the vast majority of non-Muslims today, are not technically mukallafun, because they don't know our message. They're of age and they're intelligent, they have intellect, but they have no idea who the Prophet Muhammad was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he was like, the most beautiful of all created beings, and what his message was that he taught. And by the same token, most of us who have names like Ahmed and Muhammad and Fatima and Aisha, we are definitely mukallafun. We are people who bear the moral responsibility. We are fully answerable because we are of age, we have intellect, and every one of us knows that this message is the truth. We may not know it in great detail. We may not be able to give a lecture about the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We may not be able to recite particular surah or to give tafsir on it, but we all know from our contact with scholars and family and others that this is where the truth is to be found. And this is where guidance comes, from where guidance comes. So, therefore, our responsibility is immense. And we have to take it to other people. And Allah will judge others according to what they knew or according to what they didn't know. That's a very profound thing. And we emphasize the fact that many scholars today, they overlook this very basic point. You know, we speak about the West often in very condemning terms. And yet, who are we to condemn them when we are the people who receive the message and we do not live it except rarely? We do not exemplify it except rarely. And they have the excuse before God that this message was never brought to them. Whatever they hear about Islam, in the name of Islam, whatever they see people who claim to be Muslims doing in the media is often so distorted that any person that has sound intellect would turn from it and not turn to it. So this was really beneficial, just looking at the texts and taking them seriously and then trying to transmit them. And alhamdulillah, I taught mostly in Spanish and I taught in Arabic. This is the first time that I've spoken English for almost 2 months, when most people could understand what I was saying. You know, even though English is one of the official languages of the Gambia, but you know, what they pick up from what you say is sometimes really disturbing. I remember I was talking about, because this is one of the themes that we had, that, you know, that we cannot look down on anyone, and also that, you know, all the animals around us, they do what they're supposed to do. We are the ones who are the exception. And in one village, you know, I was talking about that, about the chicken, for example, how the chicken, then my translator, he was saying, but yes, and God created the chickens so that we could eat them, and so we could have their eggs, and that's when I thought, oh, you know, there's something wrong here with the translation. And the translator doesn't even understand what you're saying. But, alhamdulillah, it's really good to be back here. And alhamdulillah, also one of the great things that happened was that I met a convert from Guinea-Bissau. You know, to the south of the Gambia is Senegal, and then there come Guinea-Bissau, which is a big and a beautiful country, and Guinea-Conakry. And this young convert came to us from Guinea-Bissau. They speak Portuguese there, and they speak Creole and Portuguese, and they have their African languages. And then he and I became very close. And then the last days he brought an officer from Guinea-Bissau, whose name was Martinho, and he and I would communicate in Spanish and Portuguese. He could speak Portuguese, and I could speak Spanish, and then we would do it carefully enough that we could understand, because Portuguese and Spanish are close. And then 3 days before I left, Martinho came. He was all filled with light, and he came with the other brother, whose name is Lamin, and mashallah, he embraced Islam. And that was really beautiful. And I told him that, you know, he didn't have to change his name or anything, but he wanted to change his name. So we gave him the name Abdul-Qadir, after Sheikh Abdul-Qadir al-Jilani. And that night also his wife, they were animists. They weren't Christians, they were animists, they worshipped spirits. And his wife saw a dream that indicated to her also that the whole family would become Muslims and that she had to come quickly into the faith. And that was really beautiful. That was khitamuhu misk. And I hope when I go back that inshallah we can go to Guinea-Bissau. And I had this little book that I brought to Canada on Portuguese. And I was going to take it with me to the Gambia, but then I said, well, you know, you have such a problem with weight anyway. Why would you take a book on Portuguese? And then it turned out that that was the thing I could really use, you know, if I had Portuguese, because then, you know, I could communicate better. After that, when Abdul Qadir came into the deen, I tried to teach him, but there, you know, Spanish wasn't always intelligible, so, you know, really needed Portuguese. Inshallah, try to develop that in the future. But these are people that, mashallah, when they come into the deen, they come in with tremendous sincerity. And hopefully, I really would love to be able to go there and to visit their villages and to meet their parents. And But again, we've got to learn how to organize what you're doing right here, which is teaching. How do we do that? So that whoever the person is and wherever they are, that we can teach them, and hopefully also that we have institutions that can produce students who can teach, who become teachers, and we can put them in these different places. You have communities that could embrace Islam by the thousands. If they do that, though, who will take their hand? Who will guide them? And you want to make sure, especially in the case of a lot of people, like these people from these Manjakus and people from Guinea-Bissau, that they are really sincere. And when they come into the deen, they come into it with a purity that is just amazing. So you have to make sure that their teachers are the right ones. You want to have, to give them teachers that bring them into the religion of truth and mercy and wisdom, and protect them from the evils of fanaticism and things like that.
Okay, I have a question. Good.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Pardon my ignorance, but you mentioned earlier that one of the basic sunnatullah is sort of the relationship between the teacher and the student. And then you mentioned that this goes back to, within all the Anbiya, dating back to Adam alayhi salam. So when you say it, do you mean between the Prophet and the incumbent people? Or did the Nabis and the have a teacher themselves, sort of like Musa alayhi salam and Al-Khidr? And if so, if it is the latter, if you could kind of just extrapolate upon that and highlight some of the previous relationships.
So we were saying at the beginning that Sheikh Abdul-Qadir al-Jilani in Al-Ghunya, and Sheikh Abdul-Qadir al-Jilani is extremely serious about the deen. As he says, the Qur'an and the Sunnah are the two wings by which you fly. And that the path to Allah is the Qur'an and the Sunnah. It is nothing that contradicts that. Nothing that goes against that. And Shaykh Abdul-Qadir al-Jilani was a Hanbali in his school. He's a Hanbali Shafi'i. He would give fatwa in both of those schools, the Hanbali school and the Shafi'i school. And like all of our great masters, he loved all the schools. But he's very, very correct. So when he says that, as a fundamental of the deen. And that passage, which is towards the end of Al-Ghunya, would be something good for us to read, because then he explains what he means by that, even speaking about examples like you said of Musa and Khidr. But essentially that relationship is one between the prophet and the angel who communicates the revelation. And so God gives his message to the Prophet in this way, and as Shaykh Abdul-Qadir al-Jilani notes, the angel Gabriel will teach the Prophet ﷺ, everything from the most basic things, even the use of the miswak. And so that relation, which is transformative in the Prophet themselves, the Prophets being perfect human beings who are perfected by the receiving of the revelation, they transmit that to their companions. The companions then have that relation to the successors. And indeed, this is the case, that the admiration and the love that the companions had for the Prophet ﷺ is something we could never match. And it's very important to have that love. This is one of the reasons why the Mawlid is important, because of the fact that its chief purpose is to cultivate in you the emotion of love, the emotion of attachment to the Prophet. There are some people who will say that the main purpose of the Mawlid is just to teach the seerah of the Prophet. And it's always good to do that. Anything that we teach about the Prophet ﷺ is extremely beneficial. But one of the key purposes of the institution of the Mawlid is to instill in you the love of the Prophet. sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to make that connection between you and him one that is tangible and one that is based in really powerful emotions. And this is the way the companions were. When we read the Shama'il, we see that everything about the Prophet they loved, everything attached to him, was filled with blessing for them. And the relation of the successors, the Tabi'un, to the companions was the same one. It was a Shaykh-Murid relationship. It was a Matbu' Tabi', Mashub Sahib relation. And the Ijazah is also based on that as well. All of our sciences of Tajweed, how do we learn Tajweed? We learn Tajweed from Shaykhs, who took it from Shaykhs, or sometimes Shaykhs as well, many times Shaykhs as well, who go back all the way to the Prophet. That this is the way that the Prophet ﷺ pronounced these letters. This is the way that he recited this surah. And these are the different readings of the book. In the transmission of hadith, in the transmission of every aspect of this religion, this is the basic connection that we have. And it's very, very important. And that's why also we always say that, knowledge is not taken from the books. It's not taken from the sutur. It's taken from the sudur. It's taken from the hearts of the men and women who received it and who embodied it. And the books are helpers. The books are there in order to enable us to take that knowledge completely and correctly, to verify it. But he who takes his knowledge just from a book is very deficient in that regard. This is one of the reasons also why a lot of people who take their knowledge from books, even from the most blessed book of all, the Qur'an, and the most blessed of all words after the Qur'an, the hadith, authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, they often make huge mistakes because of the fact that they're taking this in a way which is, it doesn't go back to the real source. It's not transmitted knowledge. Our knowledge is transmitted knowledge, and by that means, it becomes real, it becomes correct, and it becomes transformative.
Any of the sisters, inshallah? Anyone else? Okay, go ahead.
It's not my question, it's from online as well, from Brother Yusuf Sial. He sent us salams, and he's asking about the story of how you met your Sheikh, Sheikh Muhammad.
That's Muhammad Sayyal, and give him wa alayhi salam. How did I meet the Sheikh? I had a principal Sheikh for 19 years, whose name was Sheikh Muhammad Abu Bakr Hamuddin, who was an Eritrean, Qurashi, a very beautiful man. And when he died, which was in the year 2003, then he sort of took me to the other Sheikh. And that Sheikh began to have dreams of this person who looks like me, dressed like this, with the same Taylasan, which is part of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and also one of the things that Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani loved very much. And so he began to ask some of his murids, like, who is this man? I keep seeing him in my dreams. And then one of them, who, this was in Dubai, but he was working in Dubai from Chicago, he said, that's got to be Dr. Umar. Even though in 2003, I wasn't dressing like this. I had dressed like this for 16 years with my sheikh. He's the one who put that on me, put the turban on me and everything else. But when I came to the States in 2000, I didn't dress that way. And I didn't begin to dress that way again until at the end of 2006, when I made pilgrimage, and then I decided to put the clothes back on. I had all my clothes very neatly packed away in a trunk in cedar wood, and I thought I might open that trunk someday, but I didn't know if I would and when I would do it. And so I first came into verbal contact with him in 2003, and I tried to visit him 4 times. I tried to visit him on my way to India. I tried to visit him going to the Hajj. I tried to visit him going to Dubai, and it never worked out. And in 2007, in the summer, I went to Egypt, and he was there, and one of the brothers who was close to him, who knew me from Chicago, he arranged for the first meeting, and that was at the tomb of Imam al-Hussein in Cairo, and we went there, I met him, and that was love at first sight. And he also gave me a secret, and then we went to visit Imam al-Hussein with that secret, which was really, really powerful. And then from that time on, I became really close to him, and alhamdulillah. Yeah. Yes.
So, when you're intending to visit sacred places like sacred places or visit the awliya or your sheikh, what are some intentions that you should make, and how could you be sincere in that regard before you actually go, so that you can fully benefit from that?
So the question is that when you go to visit a sheikh, what are the intentions that you make to make sure that you're sincere? And if Sheikh Naeem were here, I'm sure that he could give you a very detailed answer to that question, and I'm sure that this sheikh could do that too. But there are lots of things to do, like to give sadaqah. You know, for example, like one of the things with the Mandingos, as I said, you know, they have in them a lot of Qurayshi blood. And Mandingos are very generous. And they will come up to someone like me, dressed like this, and they will put money in your hand. Like $50, for example, which is like $50 here. I mean, there it's a lot less than that in terms of dollars, but it's a lot of money for them. And then they will say, make dua. And I just couldn't do that. I mean, 2008, 2009, 2010, I just couldn't accept that money. And then the custom was explained to me. You know, that first of all, this is a gift. This is not sadaqah, and this is not payment for the dua. But in Mandingo custom, whenever you receive a guest, you always give them a gift, usually money, because they probably won't ask for the money, and they may need it. And if you don't accept it, you hurt them. If you accept it, they are very happy. And so beginning last year, after I learned that, then I said, I will now accept that gift. And we were crossing the Gambia River, and this Mandingo came up to me. He's dressed really beautifully. And he put a new $50 note in my hand. And so I took it, and he was really happy. And they do want you to make dua, but they're not paying for the dua. And this year, when we were in the Gambia, we had Al-Hafiz Muhammad Al-Amin from Chicago with us, who's also, you know, one of our brothers in the path. And it's really amazing, you know, because he saw that happen. We got off the boat coming back from Jinnah, and maybe 3 women and a man, they came up and they gave me this money. And I took it, and I made dua for them. And then I told him in the car, I said that this is a gift and this is a Mandingo custom. He'd never seen that before. And he said, Subhanallah. He said, because, you know, in the Qur'an, Allah revealed that whenever you speak to the Prophet, قَدِّمُوا بَيْنَ نَجْوَاكُمْ صَدَقَةً. You know, that you should give sadaqah before you go to speak to him. And that's what Shaykh Khalid, he said, that's what this is. That this is that sunnah. And that's because of the fact that they look at the Shaykh as being a representative of the Prophet ﷺ. And so therefore they're giving this sadaqah before they speak with you. And then I thought, that's really what it is. That must be the origin of this tradition. This is an ancient tradition with them. And, you know, but, you know, you give sadaqah, you know, you do everything that you can do to be conscious of your niyyah. But again, you know, you come to the people of Allah as you are. And they are the ones who carry you. You know, they are the ones who see you. And they are the ones who make things right. And this deen is keeping company. If you want to be courageous, keep the company of courageous people. You'll be courageous. If you want to be generous, keep the company of generous people, and you will be generous. And you know, in keeping, you know, kunu ma'as sadiqeen, be with those who are people of truth, and they will make you truthful. So it's like you are going to the people of Allah, and they are many. You know, they are not limited. They're in the east, they're in the west, they are great. And they have signs, and they are people who follow the law. They're people who call you to God. They don't call you to themselves. They are people who are like medias, you know, to teach you, to bring you to sincerity. But when you go to them, you're going to them so that they lift you up, so that they give you that sincerity, and you know that they make it real. And you know, this is part of the adab of being with the people of Allah also, that you know, you go to them as you are, you know, with the best of expectations, and also you never feel that you are imposing on them. A lot of people do that, like, you know, oh, I shouldn't talk to him, I shouldn't call him, you know, that's imposing. That's not the way. That's actually regarded as bad adab. You know, these people are there to help you. They are there to guide you. And having contact with them has a great benefit.
Sadie, we have an online question from a native Gambian, actually, and she asks, what were the most positive attributes of the Gambians that you saw or established, particularly to do with people's character? As a native, I sometimes struggle with many aspects of my home country.
Well, so the question is from a Gambian who's online, and that Gambian is asking what are the most positive qualities of the Gambian people, right?
Yes.
One of the things that I have noticed in the Gambia is that there is a very sharp distinction between the people of the city and between the people of the country. And I think this is a case in a lot of Muslim countries. So when you go to the villages, and especially to the rural villages that are not in easy contact with the cities, that's where you'll find cultures that are very well established and often very, very beneficial. Gambia, like probably every country in the third world, has the problem of what happens with urbanization in the destruction of culture, the destruction of value, in a confusion and other things like that. So there is a very clear difference in everything between the country and between the city. And one of the things that we did in the past and that we did this year also for about probably 10 days or so, maybe 15 days, was we had free medical consultation. We have a Spanish doctor who came from Spain, you know, and I would help him because he doesn't speak English. And we would receive patients from early in the morning until night. And in the city, most of the people are coming from the cities. And, you know, their problems are usually their health problems almost always go to poor eating habits, bad foods that they're eating, smoking, high consumption of sugar, high consumption of salt, and things like that. And usually when you go to the villages, the villagers eat food that is much more healthy. Their diet is a diet that is supreme, and often they don't have these health problems. But when the people come to the city, a lot of them feel, for example, that the best food is the imported food, the European food, and it's actually the worst food. And often, like they have their own rice in the Gambia. Gambia is one of the ancient producers of rice. And if they would eat that indigenous rice, especially the whole rice, it would give them almost everything they need. But instead they will get imported white rice, which is often of the lowest quality. It's unfortunately the case that a lot of times the things that are sold in Africa are things that would not sell on the European market or in other markets in the world, so they get low quality. And so there's a big difference between the city and between the countryside, and I think there are a lot of confusions that have happened in Gambian culture as well, and these are things that need to be worked on. I don't want to talk about the faults of the country because of the fact that we're not there, we're not Gambians. Gambia has problems like other countries have. One of the things that you can say about the Gambia, unfortunately, is that in many cases the women do all the work and the men don't. And especially in the cities, that can be really notorious. But there's a lot of good in the country. There's a lot of, fortunately, it's still quite a safe country. Some of the countries, I think Senegal is also fairly safe. Dakar, not necessarily so, but most of Senegal is that way. Some of the countries in West Africa are not safe. Gambia tends to be safe. The people tend to be discreet, and there are a lot of good qualities. We have to, when you go to a country like the Gambia, one of the things I'm really conscious of is how complex the society is. And mashallah, there's a great Gambian singer who was very famous in Europe, and then he became spiritual. He stopped singing the things that he'd been singing before, and he began to sing about the Prophet. And during the last 2 weeks, he became one of our brothers. He became very close to us. He's a great singer. And he and I spent a lot of time talking together. And that one of the things I told him, because we were at I was giving a talk at a family, in Banjul, and the question was asked very similar to the question that was just asked online. And my answer was basically that what the person wanted to know that, well, what can we do in the Gambia to make things better? And I did give some practical advice, but I also said that as an American, I don't really feel qualified to talk about something like that, because I understand my own society much better than I understand this one. I understand the complexities of my own society much better, but in this society, it's not easy for me to distinguish. And that's one of the things that I've seen, is that the society is very complex. There are tribal differences, there are cultural differences, there are other things like that. So you have to be sensitive to that. And this singer he liked that answer a lot. And then after that, we talked a lot about Gambian culture and how it has changed over the years. But mashallah, it's a society in which there's a lot of good. The Sufis say that if you look for good, you will find it to no end of good. And there's also, they say, if you look for evil, you will find it to no end of evil. So wherever we are, this is the case. And we want to look for the good and to find it and to cultivate it. And when we see what is wrong with the society, we want to do whatever we can, to make it better, to get things the way they ought to be.
Okay, so someone hasn't. We'll come back to you, inshallah.
Maybe just, just if you can give us advice on how does one deal with the inner self, the nafs al-ammara bis-su.
So, how do you deal with the nafs al-ammara bis-su? The whole process of self-transformation to become the best that you can possibly be is a process that has many steps. And, Satan, it is said, has 99 different manifestations by which he manifests himself, to the believer to test him. And for every state that the believer attains, Satan is able to come at him in a new and very different way. And the self is more destructive and more dangerous than 70 Satans. So these kind of questions don't have one answer. And the process of refining the self and honing the self and getting the self to become a nafs al-mutma'inna, the self that is at peace with itself and with its Lord, and the one that can take you all the way. This is something that is, for most people, a life's work. But at the very core of that is companionship. That you have to find good company and you have to keep that good company. And the brother is the mirror of the brother. The believers are the mirrors of each other. And ad-deenun nasiha, as the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this religion is counsel, sincere counsel. Counsel that is given with a desire to really help the person that you're counseling and to give them the missing thing that they need to have. So this is part of that, that being in the community of the believers, being around them, seeking their counsel, being open to it, and then especially seeking out those men and women whom Allah has blessed with the ability to guide. And they have their marks, and they're very many, and they are part of the sunnah of God in creation.
Any question from the sisters? Sorry, I can't see. Okay. Go ahead.
In the beginning, you were speaking briefly about the secret of the Sahabas and that lying in the Shaykh and the Murid relationship. Would you be able to elaborate, perhaps, in terms of what you've witnessed in Gambia, the etiquette of that relationship, amongst perhaps either the Gambians or the Qadris in particular? How have you seen that manifested?
So the question is again about the Shaykh-Murid relation, and then I don't think I heard exactly what you said, but you just wanted me to elaborate more on the details of that?
Yeah, and I guess specifically with relations to how you've seen the etiquette in that relationship in Gambia or amongst
well, the etiquettes of that. Personally, I think that one of the most important things to bear in mind is that when God puts us with the people, with His people, when Allah puts us with the people of Allah, that these men and women are people of truthfulness and sincerity. And they are not people of formalities. And so when you approach them with a good heart, you protect your heart, and in being with them, you have to be alive to the situation that is there. And there are no formalities that you follow, like step 1, step 2, step 3. And in fact, those kind of formalities, they can be something that block you from seeing that is what is in front of you. And the more that you are around, the people of Allah, the more that it's important also, to see how they behave in different contexts, and to try to understand what they are doing. One of the characteristics of the believer is al-fahmu anillah, is to understand about God, meaning to understand about the way that God works in this world. That, why are we here, for example? Why is the world in the situation that it's in? That is the will of God. And therefore, what is expected of us in this situation? So we need to respond to this situation that we're in a way that is authentic and in a way that is real. And in my experience, one of the most important things in being around the people of Allah is to try to understand what they are doing, and to be careful not to misunderstand it, because of the fact that this is how you understand their station, and therefore you need to be in the present, and you need to learn from the situation that you're in, and a lot of the people of Allah, for example, are people that if they have a very high state with God, that they have tremendous compassion for the people around them, and therefore also that in dealing with other people, they deal with them at the level that those people are at. And this is one of the most beautiful things to watch. But you have to be awake, you have to be alive, and you have to see what they're doing. But don't put yourself in a straitjacket of formalities. We are people who follow the law. We are people that do what is right. We don't do what is wrong. But in being around the spiritual guide, you have to be open to them. You have to be in their presence. And maybe a good example of that is like the example of Moses with Al-Khidr. That in the end, the greatest lesson that Moses learns is when he comes to understand why Al-Khidr did the things that he did in those situations that he did. Does that make any sense? I'm still jet lagged, by the way, so you have to... I was sleeping the whole... I wanted to come really very much, yesterday to be with Sheikh Naeem, whom I love very much. And then I fell asleep and no one could wake me up. And today I was sleeping up until 6:30. And I didn't even know if I'd be able to talk, I'm only 50% here, but it's really good to be here, and being here and seeing your beautiful faces, and being with Sheikh Faraz. I think this is also getting me probably 90% here, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
Anyone besides Sidi Nadir who wants to ask a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any advice on how to go about breaking bad habits that you've identified in yourself?
How to go about breaking bad habits. If I could break my bad habits, then I would have lots of advice to give you. But what does come to mind, are the words of Imam al-Haddad, who says that al-'ada idha rasakhat nasakhat. العادة إذا رسخت نسخت. That a habit or a custom, when it becomes implanted, it abrogates. And so this is a wisdom of his. And what it means is that if you have a good habit and it becomes implanted in you, it becomes your habit, then it will remove the bad habits. So therefore we always seek to get good habits. And if we have a bad habit, then seek, or maybe seek through others' advice, to develop a different habit. And that will then remove it, it will replace it. By the same token, if I develop a bad habit, it will remove the good habit. So our habits, you can use this to your own benefit, but good habits and bad habits, they don't coexist. And if you want to get rid of a bad habit, then it's not just that you remove it, it's that you institute something else in your life that is good, and it will replace it. And so we have to be very conscious of that. And that's the only thing that comes to mind right now. I hope that will be of some benefit.
There you go. Back to you.
Sister Rahil?
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
I wanted to ask you a question about if our purpose is to serve Allah in Ubudiyya, and for each person that manifestation is different, how does one get clarity, and does that serving change over time? Or how does one get clarity as to how one should serve in the best way possible?
Okay, so the question is, if we are to serve, how do we serve best? And how do we know what service to do? وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. That the believers are those who advise themselves. They counsel each other to follow the truth, and they counsel each other to be patient. So, again, you strive to think of the best things that you can do, and to help in every way that you can, and you also seek the counsel of those around you. Our strength is in our community. Our strength is in our companionship with each other, and taking advice of each other. But, and again, it is through companionship, and especially it is through the high companionship, of having a teacher, of having a guide, that they make sure that the service is correct. Because again, this is a place where you can go astray. Not necessarily that you become bad, but that you want to do something. And it may be that that particular path that you want to follow is not the best for you to do. And so therefore an honest guide is the one who will set you back on the right path. That, no, this is what you ought to be doing instead. And inshallah, may Allah give us the ability, to advise each other and to help each other and to work with each other in that regard, inshallah. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And may Allah give us good intentions. But I think, again, as we've said before, the kind of things that you're doing here are really, really groundbreaking and extremely important for us. And over again I've seen that, that we've got to find ways to teach effectively and to cultivate community among ourselves by being together and coming together, but also by using the kind of technology that we have today that enables us to share each other's company, even though we're in very distant places.
Assalamu alaikum. A question I had is, you spoke about non-Muslims and non-Muslims not understanding who the Prophet is. So, with that, given that, how do we Muslims, what is the best way for us to reach out to them and approach them when they have questions? And also, if they are, let's say, a bit hostile, you know, in their interaction, what is the best way for us Muslims to go about just reaching out to non-Muslims?
So this question, you know, we were speaking earlier about taklif, the imposition of moral responsibility. And in the Maliki school, you know, taklif requires three things. One is to be of age, the other is to have sound intellect, and the third is to have received the message. The message has to have come to you. So, as a consequence of this, Muslims are morally responsible. This is the great burden that we bear. Many people, if not the vast majority, of those who are not of our community, the moral responsibility that they bear before God is very minimal compared to ourselves. And this is really important, you know, that we have to be concerned about us. We have to be concerned about what we are doing. And we have got to carry the burden. We have got to live up to the task. We are not free to turn away from that. We have got to learn this religion. We have got to love this Prophet ﷺ, and we have to embody this message. And by doing that, we must be emissaries of the emissary. And, you know, we have to create a way of life which is not only a reflection of the knowledge that we have, you know, but that also has in it the ability to receive the newcomer. And, you know, when you can do that, when we develop community that is able to receive the convert and protect the convert. Converts are always very vulnerable people. You know, we are social beings. We are gregarious. You know, you cannot flourish without the structure that you have around you of family and friends and acquaintances. You know, this is what makes you strong. You know, that you are not on your own, that you have people around you who stand with you, who help you. You have your family, you have your past. The convert cuts off all of that, or most of that. And therefore the convert finds themselves in an extremely vulnerable position. That who now is my friend? What now is my relation even to my mother and my father, my aunt and my uncle? The support system no longer is the same. And therefore the convert needs to be able to find a group of people who are willing and glad, you know, to take him or her in and to give them honest counsel and not to misuse them, not to exploit them. You know, really converts are in very vulnerable positions, not just in embracing Islam, but in all religions. And, you know, we have to create communities in which we teach each other and we take care of each other. We nurture each other in the context of the greater society around us, but that also when we get brothers and sisters that come into this faith, we can respond to them in a way that is correct. To me, this is the way that we take the message. And, you know, of course, we teach, we talk, we write, we produce films, we can produce videos. We should use all means, poetry, whatever it may be, in order to communicate the truth. You know, we need to use the media whenever that's possible to do. We need to have spokesmen and spokeswomen. But ultimately, the bottom line is that our communities must be alive. And therefore they must be communities that not only provide for each of us the kind of support that we need, but that also are able to take in new people. And when you get that combination, when you see then, the manifestation of إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً, that only the believers are brothers and sisters, that we have the real brotherhood, then you'll see that the message begins to go very quickly. And usually Islam spreads through direct personal contact. Not through pamphlets, not through CDs, not through anything else, but through direct personal contact. And that direct personal contact subtly transforms. Not always suddenly, sometimes it takes years, but it's subtly, with subtleness, it transforms that person. And then that person begins to benefit from the books they have, or maybe the pamphlets that they've had, or the CDs, and they begin to take it seriously. So, but again, the main lesson, to glean from the notion of taklif is that you are mukallaf. I am mukallaf. I will be asked, and I will be held responsible. And as for our neighbors and this society, God is just, and God knows them, and God will treat them in the way that He knows is proper. And that's not my business, and it's not your business. But a lot of times, we look down on the others, and we regard them to be people who reject us outright. And they are people who, by and large, never even knew who we were. The message never came to them. So, therefore, we've got to turn the critical eye to ourselves. And this is also one of the reasons why the behavior of Muslims today can often be so contradictory. Because of the fact that you find among us people who are definitely the best of the best. I've known many men and women like that. I've never known better human beings on the face of God's earth. And my heart was joyed, to meet them. In fact, this Muslim from Guinea-Bissau that I mentioned earlier, the convert, he actually had dreams about meeting us in the Gambia. And when he came to Gambia, that he saw us. He'd seen us before. And then he said that although in embracing Islam, he found the truth, and his life, began anew, as if he was born again. But he said it's when, he got together, with the brothers and sisters that we have in the Gambia, that his heart became completely at peace. That this is the deen, this is the way. So we've got to create that community. You have it here, and you've got to protect it. You've got to nourish it. You've got to let it grow, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But again, in many of our Muslim societies, you see people that are the best of the best, and you see people that are so miserable that it is astounding. Who live lives of deception, of cheating, of being astray, in a way that's almost not imaginable. And this is because of the fact that is khidlan, that is forsakenness, because we have turned our back on the message. Who is going to carry this message if you don't do it? Who is going to live this message if you don't do it? This is my responsibility. This is your responsibility. When we do that, when we make that intention that I will live this faith, and I will be this faith, Allah will give you a light. He will give you a light, as He says many times in the Qur'an. And then, you go higher and higher and higher. But when we turn our backs on it, and all we want to do in this life is just, have the most comfortable physical surroundings we can have, the biggest homes we can have, the best cars that we can have, and get our children in the best schools with the best degrees so that they can have good careers, then we're in a really precarious situation. Because again, what were you created for? We were created to worship our Lord and to be representatives of this message on earth, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And the potential that we have is really astounding. If we can begin to live this message here in Canada, in the United States, in Britain, in the West in general, we fill a vacuum which is huge, and we are able then to offer a lifeline, to all the people around us. And I don't regard myself to be a person who knows the psychology of our community very well, but often I really question whether many of us, whether that thought ever occurs to us about being an example for the society at large and being a medium for giving this message to those who are around us. A lot of us really are extremely selfish in the way we live, that we are concerned about ourselves, we're concerned about our mothers and our fathers, our children, and quite frankly, people that are outside that narrow confine, they don't mean too much to us. That's why it's also very good for us to begin to do things like the projects that have been done here, to take care of the poor, the homeless, and things like that, to expand our consciousness and to make the consciousness a Muhammadan consciousness, one that really is concerned about the other and, that seeks to do good to creation, for creation.
Assalamu alaikum. I was just talking to my sister before, and we were talking about difference in opinion and how to sort of pick and choose whether it's a madhab questions or different things. So just wondering if you can shed some light on what's the best way to navigate all this difference in opinion that we hear in different topics. What should be our approach to it?
What is the best way to navigate the different opinions that we hear and so forth? I think that, if you're here in Toronto and you have access to Seekers Hub, that these are areas where knowledge is very important. In Islam, we make a fundamental distinction between what is definitive, what is qat'i, and has only one interpretation, and we all agree. And between what is dhanni, what is open to interpretation, not to infinite interpretation, but maybe to 2, 3, or 4 different points of view. So in the authentic presentation of the religion, there are always different opinions about certain matters. And this is where we need to choose on the basis of knowledge and on the basis of understanding of our society. You have the hukm, you have the ruling, and the ruling has different aspects to it. And then you have the situation in which we live, and you have the tanzil of the hukm, you have the application of that ruling to that situation. So these are areas where we have to have knowledge, we have to have consultation, and where also we have to benefit from each other. That what is the best way forward, for example, in Canadian society? And that requires that people like yourself have input also. You understand this society, you understand this people. I myself am an American, and I understand Americans better than I understand anybody else. I may not understand anybody very well, but when I came here in December, that's one of the things that I discovered. I love this society, but some of the things that people are concerned with here, some of the attitudes, some of the cultural aspects of Canadian life are very different from south of the border. So if you're going to be effective in Canada, you've got to understand that. You've got to be able to relate to it properly. Also, sometimes the different options that are there are options that, if we look at them in terms of knowledge, then some of them are ruled out, because some of them may be extremely weak, they may not even be correct. And here, it's important for us, again, to follow knowledge and to have teachers that we can rely on, and to present the message with great wisdom. One of the characteristics of the true sheikh is that the true sheikh embodies the verse رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. O God, forgive us and forgive our brothers who preceded us in faith, and put no rancor in our hearts for those who believe. So the real sheikh is the one who's open to all the ummah, to all the believers. And in the things that they do, in the message that they deliver, they're always trying to bring people back together. And we must not lose sight of that. All of us here, I believe, are people who have a commitment to traditional Islam, to traditional Islam of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. This is something that is precious. I believe that this is the truth. And I love that tradition. However, when we look at the Muslim society at large, many people today, especially today, they're confused about that. They don't know what that means, they don't know how that applies, and maybe even they've seen what they believe to be examples of that going off track, And so when we speak to people like that also, we've got to learn to do that in such a way that we recognize their brotherhood and their sisterhood, and we open up the door of very sincere discourse and very fraternal discourse, and we don't chase people away. And it's very important never to make ourselves a sect, never to make ourselves an elite, a club, to the exclusion of others. We have knowledge which is there for all the ummah, and we need to present it that way. And we need to do it in the way that I believe that it has been done here, at least by people like Sheikh Faraz and what I've seen, in a way that is intelligible to all. We want to give knowledge back to the ummah. And we, one of the things that, for example, this last 2 months in the Gambia, one of the most important things that I watched actually was watching my Shaykh, may Allah bless him, deal with the sick. And I mean by that, people who are not just physically sick, but people who are spiritually sick. People who have problems, big problems, such as lying, such as laziness, confusion. And this is one of the most important lessons, really, that all the 2 months, that this is the way we deal with the sick. And I remember when I was in Spain, when I was in Gambia last year, and the Spanish doctor had me translate for him. One of the things that he did is that, I've never practiced medicine, so when he would translate, I would translate, but sometimes I would become emotional in the translation, and he stopped that right away. And he told me that, look, when you translate for me, you've got to translate exactly as I say. And, your emotion has got to be out of this completely. Because when one woman told me her story, I couldn't help but cry. Because her story was very painful. Very painful. And it's basically when that was finished, this is when the doctor talked to me, and he just said, I understand why you did that, but we can't do that. And the main reason why is because he said that you are a healthy person and you are a strong person. And these people are not. These people are sick. So therefore, the only kind of emotion that we can show to them in dealing with them is one that is neutral. And that enables them, to give us everything they need, and also enables us to speak to them in a way that helps to cure them. And in fact, mashallah, when we went back this year, everyone that we had spoken to the year before was better. And because this brother, it's like his medicine is holistic medicine. He is trained as an allopath, and he's trained also as a homeopath. He's trained with traditional medicine and also with modern medicine, and he respects all of that. But he gives a lot of attention to people, and a lot of these people would say we go to the doctor and we sit with them for 5 minutes and they give us some medicine and we leave, whereas we would sit with them for 30 minutes or for an hour, and it was really valuable also because you learn the nature of the society, the way that people eat, the problems they have, and so forth. But also in dealing with the sick among us, people who are spiritually in distress. How do you do that? And this is where also, we in dealing with them have to have huge compassion and love for them, and never look down on them. Never see yourself as better, and never be blinded by the fault they have, which is their sickness. You want to bring them out of that, and maybe the process takes 10 years. But, now that he is your brother, you want to bring him carefully. And I think that was the greatest lesson of all. Not that I hope that I learned it. I hope I benefited from it. But, and again, this is a position of great love and compassion for creation. And patience with people. And speaking, and again, learning to speak to people, on their level. Which can be very difficult. How can we speak to each other if we don't, first of all, understand each other? And it's very easy for a person like me, or like a teacher in general, just to talk to ourselves. To repeat the things we've memorized and learned and so forth without actually being conscious of, does anybody understand what you're saying? Is anyone actually benefiting from what you're saying? But especially when we're talking about curing the sick, the spiritually sick, the spiritually impoverished, and people who maybe are really wrong, then you've really got to be able to understand them. And then, find the healthy part of them and bring them, back to the path little by little.
We'll take one more question, inshallah.
You talked before about having humility and seeking knowledge, but when you're in an environment where everybody's constantly celebrating excellence and everybody gets a trophy even for the smallest thing, how do you keep your ego in check?
How do you keep your ego in check in seeking knowledge? And of course, you're talking about an environment where excellence is encouraged and in fact required. And I remember, when in the old days you write applications to universities and you seek to get fellowships, you're not very humble in what you say, are you? It's like, in a way, I'm the best, you look at me, I did this, I did that, I want to do this, I want to do that. And we live in an environment where fame is really important. And in the academic environment, your reputation, your fame, your articles that you wrote, you have to defend them. Even I know scholars in my own field, Islamic studies, who know they're wrong. And I know that from close students of theirs, that when it comes to the origins of Islamic law, and mashallah, I finished my book, Malik in Medina, Islamic Legal Reasoning in the Formative Period. I finished that here on December the 15th. alhamdulillah, and hopefully it'll come out this next year. And I hope that you'll benefit from it. It's an academic book, but I tried to write it in a way that a non-academician could read. And I think it's really important. It will give you insight into why we have these 4 basic Sunni schools. That they are different methodologies in our approach to the law, especially to the conjectural matters of the law, the areas of ijtihad, which are the vast majority of the law. And but I know that one of the things I did in the book is to show that a lot of the paradigms of the study of Islamic law in the West are totally wrong. I've known that for over almost 40 years. But here, it's like I tried to really show that consistently and carefully and objectively. And some of the scholars, some of whom used to be here in Canada, they know they're wrong on that. But again, it's like, how do they take another position without harming their careers? And in some cases, they even maybe will back out of the field. One of them told one of his students, something to that effect, that like, yeah, I know this is wrong, but like, don't say anything yet. Don't write anything yet. I'm writing another book. When that's done, then we can talk about this. So, honesty is not easy in the academic environment. And different schools in academia are like tribes. Even in sociology, you have different languages of sociology, different approaches to sociology. They don't necessarily get along. It's like, can't we have an open discourse? This is one of the most important things that the teacher has to have. The teacher has got to be humble. And one of the most important things that the teacher communicates to the student is not to be proud. And if you are proud, you will destroy this knowledge at its very roots. A good example of that in history is the way that Imam Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, who was one of the masters of the masters, without any question, would answer fiqh questions by saying, I do not know. La adri. And had he wanted to answer, he could have given the best answer possible. But he would only answer the question if he knew for sure what the answer should be. And if he had any equivocation, or if he had any sense that he needed to look into it further, he would say, honestly, I do not know. And then he taught his students the same thing. He would teach his students to say, I do not know, la adri. And he would even give them talqeen. The talqeen is, when you, how do we say that in English? When you have people say the words after you so that they receive the secret. In fact, this is one of the reasons why we take the shahada. Because when the convert comes into the faith, in giving them the shahada, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, we're doing talqeen. The convert wants to convert. The convert has made the decision that I want to be in this faith. But the convert often doesn't understand the words. And it's not really necessary to even translate the words. You can translate the words later, but what you're doing is talqeen. The secret is in the fact that you know what the words mean. And those words are a reality in you. And now you are, communicating that. You are translating that. Not by translation, but by giving it. By putting it on the tongue of that person, and they take it over. So Imam Malik would do talqeen to his students of La adri, I do not know. Say that. I do not know. I do not know. I do not know. And this is very difficult for us today. For most scholars today, Muslim scholars today, to say the words I do not know would be like stabbing themselves. It's impossible. impossible. And these are the things that may Allah give us the gift to do that. And again, you know, we often put our scholars in positions where they're supposed to know everything. And that's very, very dangerous, because we don't know everything. We know very little, as a matter of fact. And so therefore, the more that we can be honest, and the more that we can be truthful about our own limitations, the more honest we are with the knowledge that we have, and the more that it benefits, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Beware of the maker of claims. This is one of the main principles of a good life, and certainly of the path. Beware of the maker of claims. Any person who comes to you and says, I am this, I am that, I have this and the other, you know, this is a person who generally you have to be very cautious about. The people that have the greatest gifts of all are the people who lay no claim to those gifts. And they are the most humble. And they are also often the most effacing. And, you know, as again Sheikh Naeem said yesterday, you know, put yourself down to the level of the earth, and God will raise you up to the heights of the heavens. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Anyway, again, thank you very much for coming. It's really good to see you again. And it's really even helpful for me. And, you know, mashallah, I came here not even sure if I'd be able to speak. I just woke up from sleep, and now I feel like I'm almost back to normal, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Allahumma waffiqna lima tuhibbuhu wa tarda, waj'alna min abidika as-su'ada, wa amitna ala kalimati al-huda. علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما. آمين 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 يا رب العالمين. بسر الفاتحة بالقبول. الفاتحة.